Working with the retained fear paralysis. Now, reflex. What people don't understand truly is what a reflex is. So first of all, again, it's the evaluation. And this has been my biggest task this year is to do complete evaluations, and one of them is for reflexes, so a deviation charts. But what people don't realize that when most people have, especially what they consider a fear paralysis, is they think it's a reflex. For some reason, reflexes are taught that it's a startle or for fear, like Moro. That's not what Moro is. Moro is a response of gravity in all directions, and the pelvis is the only thing that can articulate movement in all directions. So you need all four appendages to go simultaneously in the same, in opposing directions. And that gets that gyroscopic function going in the pelvis. And that's truly what a reflex is. And one of the papers that I'm putting together now in the abstract you can see in the post is nobody has recognized the gravitational responses to reflexes, because gravity is sort of a big stimuli that we have from the day we're born into the day we die. And so first of all, you have to evaluate where your child's at with gravity. So are they still in the absolute horizon, or the first breathing? Gravitational to breath? Are they into the absolute horizon? Have they started to come off the floor? Have they come down to the floor? Are they now going into the hanging reflexes and so forth? So when a child has fear-based startles, are we talking about, are they already ambulatory where they can be in sitting and stuff, or are they still in lying down? This is where I don't like a general answer, because it all depends on where the child's at. But if the child has not got the absolute horizon within them, I'm going to tell you right now, they're going to have a fear paralysis. But at the same time, too, is it a fear paralysis too, or is it it's intelligence? Where they're startling. Now, also, we have to look at all three skills, the main skills. So where are they visually? Are they visually impaired where they really don't have a good visual midline? Because again, if a child's suffering in midline complications, especially visuals, they are going to have more of a startle, because again, they can't just go like, yeah, so kind of thing and come back. They're because something's coming out of their side vision. Same thing, like again with the midlines, the fine and the gross motor skills. So those are all evaluations that really should be taken into consideration. And now the other big one, again, this is more so intelligence. Where are you looking at their? I just got a thing from Facebook on the reactions and showing up, and so that was a squirrel moment. You have to look at a child's tipping point, and this is another thing that I'm looking for. Everybody has a tipping point. It's actually something we really covered in great detail in the laser training this weekend. But again, it has to go back to your midline. But if I work with a child and I go to move them, again, what you might say is a startle reflex. It's again, and that's an immature evaluation of one. It's actually, I've gone past the tipping point, or your child has gone back the tipping point. Now, visually, the vision's off. The tipping point will be more reactive. And so you have to look at that. But again, in lying down, as well as in a vertical positioning, everybody has this where I can push you or move you too far to where there's a moment where you go from opposing gravity to succumbing gravity. That's your tipping point, right? And it varies from day to day, depending on our medications. It could be lots of things. Did I sleep well last night? But I mean, I can go like this with you, and I'm not worried about falling on the ground. Whereas a child, let's say, that's compromised with cerebral palsy, they might be in dystonia right now because they're like, if I move from this position, I'm going to fall. And when fall comes in, fall-based responses is much more of a deviation into a child's psyche or any of our psyches, right? It's same thing with the senior citizen. Don't fall, be careful, all of that. When we are working on fall-based deviations, we're going to have a much higher, what is considered a startle-based reflex response. And that, again, is completely different. I'm being intelligent. I don't want to fall. It's not being big. I could be overreactive, but in most cases, it's not being overreactive. It's a very intelligent way of the system. But we have to work with the system and find out why they are organizing into a fall prevention movements, which are considered a fear-based paralysis, versus going into transitioning skills and weight transfers. And that's what you get out of movement lesson. So those are the things that you really need to look at for your child. But if you think you're just working on the reflex and you're going to get answers, you're going to get frustrated when there's a cap on the rotational responses, the functional movements, right? And people tell you that you have to get past the response. I get it, but how are you getting past it? You've got to look at the breathing. You've got to look at the gravitational responses. You have to look at the visual responses, the midlines. I know it's a lot. And then you have to look at the tipping points. These are really your 5 key areas. And if your child is weak in one, if not all 5 of those, that's where you're going to first using movement lesson. And then you'll see much more of the reflexes now becoming much more functional in the movements, because we use reflexes like a Moro as a cartwheel. So we use reflexes all the time, but we have to use them within gravity. And that really hasn't been recognized for, and that's what my paper and presentation are going after in September at Charles University. And so I'm working on it quite actively, and we'll go from there. Thanks.